Recently, I came across a Facebook post that caught my attention. It stated that a woman who can pay her bills and put food on the table is not afraid to be alone. Curious, I decided to search Facebook for similar posts and I found several versions of this idea. One variation stated that a woman who can pay her bills and put food on the table does not need a man. Now, there are two main interpretations of this sentiment. On one hand, some believe that when a financially independent woman meets a respectful, supportive man who's willing to build something meaningful, she would happily embrace that relationship. But if she encounters a man who takes her for granted, she won't hesitate to walk away because she can take care of herself and doesn't need him. On the other hand, some interpret this to mean that a woman who can handle her own needs simply doesn't need or care about men at all. Clearly, the latter stance is more extreme, but both views are rooted in the same core belief, which is that a financially capable woman doesn't need a man to survive and therefore doesn't mind being single. In today's video, I want to examine this idea carefully, challenge some of the assumptions behind it, and offer a more balanced perspective. Hi there, my name is Immanuel Diai and I am the Stupidity Equalizer. On this channel, we challenge widely accepted lies, expose their flaws, and explore wiser, more truthful alternatives for living a grounded life. Welcome to today's video. To understand how this mindset came to be, we need to go back, way back, to ancient times before modern civilization, cities, and technology. Our ancestors lived in harsh, unforgiving environments. They lived in forests, caves, tents, mountains. Life was brutal. They faced wild animals, floods, fires, diseases, and had no real health care. Medicine then was closer to guesswork than science. A single mistake could literally mean death. On top of this, women faced unique challenges. They also had to deal with pregnancy, childbirth, and raising newborn children, all of which were physically demanding and risky. Given these vulnerabilities, it was nearly impossible for women to survive alone while also having to hunt, gather food, and defend themselves. Naturally, women had to depend on men. Not just any men, but strong, physically capable men. Back then, strength was the ultimate currency. The stronger a man was, the more capable he was of providing and protecting, and the more attractive he was to women. The strongest men often had the most wives, and usually the most beautiful ones. This was the relationship dynamic. Women absolutely needed men for their very survival. Over time, this formed an unwritten social contract between men and women. Roles were clear. Men handled physically demanding and dangerous tasks, while women managed less intensive work, which allowed them time to care for their children, their husband, and their home. This system lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, and even though it was an imperfect system, it worked. But there was a dark side to this arrangement. Since men had the physical power, some abused it. A man could disrespect, dominate, or even physically harm a woman with little consequence. While women sometimes used manipulation or persuasion to assert influence, The brute reality was that physical strength ruled, and strength belonged to men. This imbalance sowed seeds of injustice. As civilization advanced, however, humanity developed better living conditions. Machines reduced the need for brute strength, and warfare became dominated by weapons, not physical prowess. The gap between male and female dependence started to shrink. Today, in the modern era, creativity, intellect, and emotional intelligence have become more valuable than raw strength. Women now have access to education, high paying jobs, legal protections, and social support systems. They can make their own money, they can hire help for childcare, and rely on institutions like the police or courts for security and justice. Naturally, this shift has transformed the relationship dynamics between men and women. For the first time in history, many women can beat their chests and genuinely say, I don't need a man to survive. And because survival is no longer a primary driver, relationships today are more about choice than necessity. That is why statements like the following have gained so much popularity. A woman who can pay her bills and put food on the table is not afraid to be alone. A woman who can take care of herself does not need a man. Or I will make my own money so that no man can use me. These statements are a reaction to centuries where women didn't have the option of independence. However, the question remains, is survival the only reason for a relationship? If a woman no longer needs a man for financial or physical survival, does that mean she doesn't need men at all? That is what we are going to explore next. You see, as attractive as this idea might seem, especially within feminist circles, I believe there are important nuances worth examining. For instance, I've noticed that some women who strongly cherish this idea often do so from a place of fear, the fear of having to need a man or even anyone at all for their personal survival. Also, when someone repeatedly states that they need their own money, so they will never need a man, it subtly suggests that in their mental framework, the primary role of a man is financial provision. Think about it for a minute. You see, even when they appear independent or are striving to be, the underlying mindset still sees men first and foremost as providers. Why else would someone think to herself that she does not need a man? After all, she can take care of herself. It is because in her mind she still sees men first and foremost as providers. It follows, therefore, that for those with this mindset, financial independence is not just about personal growth or ambition, but a defensive strategy against perceived vulnerability within traditional gender dynamics. To be clear, this is not to diminish the value of financial independence for women. What I'm suggesting is that when this drive stems primarily from a reaction to vulnerability rather than from a desire for holistic self actualization, it remains bound to the very frameworks that it seeks to escape. In essence, the core ideology guiding the relationship dynamics between men and women hasn't fundamentally changed. Instead, the same framework has been dressed in new clothes. What is really needed is a redefinition of the purpose and dynamics of relationships, moving beyond mere provision and survival towards deeper, more harmonious foundations. At this point, we need to understand that survival should never be the only reason to be in a relationship. In fact, I dare say that it shouldn't even be the primary reason. If a woman dismisses relationships simply because she can survive on her own, then she has already missed the deeper point of what relationships are truly about. Let me ask you this. When you make friends, do you do so because you need them to pay your bills? Or do you choose friends because you like who they are and maybe even love them as people? If friendship is based on connection, mutual respect, and enjoyment of each other's company, then why should financial provision be the central motivator when choosing a romantic partner? One of the fundamental benefits of being in a relationship, especially with a life partner or a spouse, is companionship. Having someone steady in your life, someone who walks with you through the sweet and bitter changes that life brings, is a gift. It's about having someone who listens when no one else does, someone to share both your successes and your failures with, someone who remains by your side when things are tough and other people abandon you. That companionship is one of life's greatest sources of joy and resilience. Beyond companionship, a good relationship helps us self actualize. When you're with the right partner, especially if you keep an open mind, you will grow. You will learn new things, gain fresh experiences, explore different interests, and form new connections through your partner's social circles. A good partner can also reflect aspects of yourself that you hadn't noticed, areas where you might need growth. And this insight, when received with humility, can help you become a better, more complete person. And even on the issue of survival itself, life is rarely a straight, predictable line. Just because you have money today doesn't mean you are immune to setbacks. Businesses fail, jobs can be lost, unforeseen events happen. In those moments, a partner can be a pillar of emotional support and sometimes even financial support. This is true for both men and women. So while survival might have been the ancient foundation of relationships, today relationships offer us far more than just security. They offer growth, connection, meaning, and the kind of shared journey that no amount of money can buy. Relationships also offer us something society often refuses to give: second chances. Think about it. If you make a mistake, the public can be merciless. People may criticize you harshly, cancel you, or write you off entirely without caring about the full story. But a partner, someone who truly knows you, understands your heart, and cares about your growth, can stand by you when the world turns its back. They can remind you of your worth, provide emotional support, and help you find the strength to grow beyond your mistake. In that way, relationships can be a safe space for personal redemption, a place where you are seen not just for your worst moments, but for your potential to become better. Now, I want to raise a point that some people might find controversial, but my goal here is not to offend, but to search sincerely for truth. Even in today's world, where feminist ideals of equality are loudly promoted, the reality is that many of the most dangerous and physically demanding jobs are still being done by men. Look around. It is predominantly men who work in mines, who work on construction sites, who undergo deep sea exploration. Most police officers are men. Most military personnel are men. Most firefighters are men. Other life threatening professions, most of them, the people involved are men. If we truly want to talk about equality, shouldn't the conversation include all aspects of society? Is it only when it comes to leadership roles, political appointments, or boardrooms that we hear equality, equality? Why don't we hear louder calls for gender parity on the battlefield, or in firefighting, or in high rise construction work? Why does the push for equality seem to stop where the work becomes physically hazardous or less glamorous? This isn't to say that women don't contribute immensely to society, they absolutely do. My concern is with the selective application of equality, which sometimes reveals a deeper hypocrisy in the discourse. If equality is the ideal, then let it be pursued holistically, not just in the areas of comfort and power. Beyond that, there's a broader issue here: the mistaken belief that men and women are in some sort of competition. This idea has become so widespread that many women today feel a need to prove that they don't need men, that they can do everything on their own. But this mindset overlooks a fundamental truth: men and women are not competitors, we are codependent. This codependence is evident even at the most basic biological level. If all women disappeared today, humanity would be doomed. The same is true if all men vanished. Without each other, the human race cannot continue. So why do we insist on framing this relationship as adversarial? Why the constant need to prove that you don't need anybody? Nature itself shows us that balance and variety are necessary for life to flourish. Men and women may gravitate towards different interests or professions, but those differences complement each other. Together, we form a complete system, a partnership that's essential not just for survival, but for thriving. In the end, the idea that a woman, or anyone for that matter, should strive for absolute independence from the opposite sex is not just impractical, it's also contrary to how life is designed. True strength is not in isolation, but in meaningful connection. The relationship between men and women is not meant to be a competition of who needs who less. It is meant to be a partnership where both can thrive, support each other, and grow together. Codependence is not weakness, it is the wisdom of acknowledging that we are better together. When we choose cooperation over competition, we open ourselves up to richer experiences, deeper emotional support, and greater opportunities for self actualization. A healthy relationship should not diminish your individuality, it should amplify it. With the right partner, you do not lose yourself, you find better versions of yourself. So rather than focusing on proving we don't need each other, let's focus on building relationships that are founded on respect, mutual growth, and companionship. Life is too vast and complex to be lived alone, and there is no shame in admitting that we are all in some way designed to walk this journey together. Now, of course, there are those who have decided to go through life without getting married or having a life partner. If that is what you have chosen for yourself, then it is totally fine. However, even in this case, it should not be based on a fundamental distrust or hatred of the opposite sex. I'm going to stop here for today's video. Do take care of yourself. Till next time, my name is Immanuel Diai, and I am the Stupidity Equalizer. Bye.